Hey gamers, welcome back. Today I'm going to review The Witcher 3. Now if you haven't played this great game yet, it's available on the PS4, Xbox One, and the PC. The version I'm reviewing is going to be the PC version of the game. So overall, for my first playthrough, it took me about 100 hours. I played Death March mode, which is the hardest mode in the game, and I wanted to complete all the armor sets in the game that were Witcher set, so that's why it took me so long, and to do most of the question marks on the map. The thing about this game is that I've seen review scores 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and people calling it the perfect game. Now don't get me wrong, I love the game, and it's definitely a top contender for GOTY this year, Game of the Year. But there were some things in this game that needed work on, and I'll definitely mention it in this review. I'll go ahead and answer the question that I keep receiving from people I know, is can you actually play The Witcher 3 without playing 1 and 2? Yes, you can definitely play The Witcher 3 without playing 1 and 2, however, you're going to not know some of the characters in the game, you're not going to know some of the deeper lores behind the game and what Geralt has gone through to remember who he is. I've been playing this game since CD Projekt released Part 1, so I've been a huge fan of The Witcher. In fact, Part 2 is one of my GOTY from a couple years back. Keep in mind that Part 1 and Part 2 won't be as great as Part 3, but they were a great game nonetheless and will take you a couple hours to beat. If you don't want to do that, you can go wiki or watch the movie of the game and get some short story lores out of it. Now, I'll try not to spoil the story as much as possible because The Witcher is really rich in lore. So the story of The Witcher 3 focuses on Geralt traveling to find Yennefer, which in turn then becomes a game seeking out Ciri, who was a child that Geralt trained back in Kaer Morhen with Vesemir. So he's being chased by a group of elves called the Wild Hunt, who comes from a very faraway place. And just to give you an insight on what Geralt is, for those of you who don't know, he's a Witcher. Witchers are those that have undergone intensive training mentally and physically, and then undergo a ritual to become a mutant, who can take potions that are poisonous to humans and become monster hunters. They're sterile, they're fast, they're stronger, they heal faster than most people, and can carry and use signs, which are combat magic. And as you can see, Geralt belongs to the School of the Wolf. There's different schools out there, the cat, the griffin, the bear, etc. And each of them carry a medallion which tells them when evil is nearby. And most of the time they take on the stance of neutrality. Anyways, the story primarily focuses on searching out Ciri and backtracking to areas of the land to find out where she's been, what happened at those places, the story behind it, and then all of this amidst chaos between the southern invasion of the north. All of this along with the Wild Hunt. Anyways, I don't want to go any more with the story because later on it gets mind-blowing epic. Aside from the great game story, there's also a lot of choices in the game. Some of the choices will have a positive impact, some of them will have a negative impact. The biggest impacting choices will be the one with the timers that you see in the game. Later on in the game, you'll see certain choices. There's a little timer next to it. You're limited to a time to pick a choice. So aside from just choices, every conversations have very extensive cutscenes. You can even pick choices to give you more lore and story on the game, which is really great if you're into a lot of cutscenes and a lot of storytelling. It tells you a story, it gets you engaged, and it gets you really immersed. Now on to the next subject, which is the graphics of the game. And yes, I did read about the downgrades for the PC version from the 2013 trailer. A lot of people really got into that, but let it be known that I did not take it personally like most people. I read the dev's decision, what happened because of complex issues in the game design process. They took it personally for many opinions and are fixing it in any ways they can for future patches and enhancement. So you can read about it online if you want to. And yes, I did buy a Titan X for this game and it was well worth it. I maxed out every single settings on Ultra and ran the game perfectly fine with NVIDIA Hairworks on. Before that, before the patches, it was crashing, it was chugging FPS. So it wasn't really optimized to start out with, but after several patches so far, it's been running great and stable. I know a lot of people out there have certain different cards and are still having problems. Hopefully they'll get this patched up and fix your problems. But even with the so-called downgrade, the game is still downright beautiful. From the day and night cycle, the changing weathers of wind and rain, the beautiful immersive environment landscape of plain open areas, wooded areas, and even snow-covered areas. There are birds in the air, animals roaming the land, such as deer, rabbits that you can kill, and even cats. Wait, what? The NVIDIA Hairworks in the game is absolutely amazing if you can actually see it on full settings with every strand of hair using this tech. It doesn't apply much to Geralt's hair, but when you see monsters like the Griffin or people who wear fur robes, you'll see the effect shine. Keep in mind that it still needs to be tweaked a little bit. It can cause massive FPS drops for lower end cards, but the textures in this game is also some of the most beautiful thing I've seen in video games, especially when you can see the pores on people's faces. That's just gorgeous. So the music and sound in this game, you can hear in the background of my review, is some of which you heard from the trailer. There will be some lyrics to it, some chants, and others will have memorable sounds and tunes for certain areas of the game. One of my favorite is the Crone music, believe it or not, along with some of the other battle music in the game. They are superb. Along with the music, the sound effects, and the voice acting in this game are top notch.
It's a saying. So what now? Powder my nose?
No need. The gentleman's complexion is light enough.
So most parts of the game you'll be controlling Geralt, but there will be certain parts of the game for story reasons you'll control Ciri. The control for the game, which I prefer for this game, is keyboard and mouse, because I've always been a PC gamer. You know, I love using keyboard and mouse. However, it was a bit clunky on it, especially in terms of movement. It didn't feel as smooth, and being on the horse sometimes you lose control at times, and also the combat felt kind of clunky. You would hit a button to focus on the enemy, but you have to slide your mouse way too far. It would take way too long to switch targets, especially when you're being ganged up by monsters in groups of like 5 or more. So I didn't use this function as much and whacked away at monsters. And being honest with you, I decided to connect my PS4 controller and played the game, and it seems like it was a lot smoother and better, especially when navigating around corners with Geralt. That felt smoother, and changing target was just quick and on the fly. So hopefully, like I said before, I hope they fix this, patch the PC controls, and make it a lot smoother. Along with the controls, there are multiple ways to travel in this game. You can run or walk, call for your horse, which requires whistling, auto ride function with your horse, where you hold one button. For me, it was the shift button to travel on roads. Basically, if you're on the road, you hold shift down, it's going to keep going on the road. However, this function needs a bit more work because it seems like it's very, very messy. Sometimes the horse would veer off the road by itself and hit signs or trees and get stuck for a little bit, so it's not really auto ride. You have to still control it. Or if you go around a sharp corner, it'll just veer off the corner and go in a different direction. So it needs a bit of work on that, but overall it's okay. Game also includes fast traveling. Fast travel requires you to be at the signpost to travel to another signpost, so you can't just be in the middle of nowhere and go, oh, I'm going to fast travel here. It doesn't work that way. You have to discover signposts, and there's even boats in the game to get on, so the map is really massive. And of course, there's also diving and swimming. However, you can't attack in any other way or form without a crossbow, so the only way you can attack mobs in the water or underwater is if you equip your crossbow, you can shoot them. Let's move on to gameplay. Questing in the game are separated into 3 categories. The main quest, which needs to be done to progress in the storyline. There's secondary quests, which involves other situations in the land. And then there's Witcher contracts, which helps Geralt earn money by hunting monsters. The thing I definitely enjoy the most about the Witcher contracts is you can actually haggle for more money from a certain individual, and then sometimes during a choice, you can give back that money to the individual if you choose so. It depends on how you feel. It's really nice that you're given a choice. The Witcher contracts are great, but a lot of them were kind of underwhelming with some of the monsters. If they're the same monsters that you've seen before, it was kind of underwhelming for me just for some of the quests. They always follow the same theme of you go into the site and you're looking in Witcher vision mode to see things that you normally don't see in normal vision, and kind of go into CSI Geralt. You basically try to solve the crime on what type of monster it is, what caused all these things, and you follow track. And it's always the same kind of theme, so it got repetitive at times. At the end of the game, I did finish all of them, and they were pretty okay. The biggest reason that they hooked me up was because of the story and the lore behind it. It's always the story, the lore, and the well-written script. The next thing I want to talk about is the map of the game. If you open up the map, you'll see 3 large areas mostly. The other areas you can visit, but the White Orchard is where you start off at in the beginning of the game, and then you go to Valen, and eventually Skellige. But these maps are freaking huge. They have tons of question marks on them, and plenty of just side activities that you can do. From freeing outposts from bandits and pirates, monsters, and so on. Destroying monster nests and finding treasures, or saving people. There's also places of powers mixed up in certain places. I did a majority of them on the map before I was burned out, and it was really fun for a bit, but then eventually it got repetitive for me after 80 hours, but I did manage to find almost every treasure on one map. Some of the returning events in this game that I want to talk about is fist fighting. Fist fighting is back. You can actually go into fist fight mode now instead of just doing QTEs, which is great. There's even a whole entire quest line for fist fighting. They did take away arm wrestling though, but added in horse racing to upgrade your horse's gear and earn some money. But another thing they took away is the dice game. There's no longer the dice crap game that you used to play in the past, because now the biggest thing in this game is Gwent. Gwent is a card game that can get really exciting, but it's really easy to play and really easy to understand. There's even a side mission for that also. It requires you to go around all over the world to complete your deck of cards, and there's even a side mission to collect rare cards. The other thing I want to mention about Gwent to help some of you guys out there is that there's different factions of Gwent in your deck. People don't know this. I didn't know this for hours, but you can actually change the faction through an arrow on top of your deck and rearrange the deck. I'm not even that great at card games. You start collecting all the rare cards or some of the rare cards, you become unstoppable at Gwent. The thing is, you start using those cards in the deck and literally you just crush your opponents throughout the game. Getting to the gameplay, I want to talk about some of the enemies in the game. Most of the opponents in the game will be monsters of all sorts, and the bestiary is really extensive. There are humanoids, there are humans, bandits, and pirates, so on, but there's going to be cyclops and spectrals and wyverns and basilisks, vampire, werewolves, mummies, you name it. Except for the mummies part, that would be kind of cool though. The list is extensive. Some of the models were overused a bit. The only noticeable ones to me were the cockatrice, the basilisk, and the wyverns. And they didn't have enough different patterns to them to actually see the difference. So it kind of ruined immersion at that part, but that's a personal note. The biggest immersion breaking factor for me in this game would have to fall under this category, which is the enemy AI. Now, the patterns they do, the attacks they do from the bosses to the enemies are really nice and all, but the biggest problem is they're leashed. They have a certain range that they will follow the character. So if you're fighting them, and let's say you go a little too far, the enemies will run back to their area, and they'll try to taunt you back into that position to fight you again, which is a really nice way to hide it. But aside from that, if you go to the boundary, they will run around in circles. I noticed at certain times the enemies just run around in circles doing nothing. Sometimes if you're out of range, you can even shoot at them, and they won't react to you. So in short, the AI for this game really is a letdown, and I hope that the enhanced version or patches will fix this up, because there needs to be a better AI system. The AI is just downright clumsy. The other thing I want to mention is that the enemies in this game don't really scale with your characters. There's different leveled mobs all over the place. So once you hit a certain level in the game, which is level 30, 31, you become really powerful and unstoppable because you can wear certain gears and there's nothing out there that can stop you, unfortunately. So the challenge just goes away, even on Death March difficulty. So the only challenging part about Death March difficulty really is during the beginning of the game when you're trying to level up. Now moving on to the combat of the game, the Witcher Geralt is able to carry two types of weapon with him. One is the main hand and the other one is the secondary. The main hand is usually a steel sword, which he uses on the wildlife such as bears and wolves, and humanoids such as pirates and bandits. The secondary is going to be a silver sword. The silver sword is used on monsters in the game. Now the reason I called it a main hand and secondary is because later on in the game, you can always replace the steel sword with something else if you find it, like a club or whatnot. And you can use different weapons if you like, which are strong also. So it really depends on what you want to do. There's different types of sword sets, there's different types of clubs that you can use. So it's really nice that you have the ability to change out from just using a sword the entire game. The other very nice feature about this game is that in this game, you don't have to manually take out your swords. You can. Depending on what mobs you face, Geralt will automatically choose the appropriate sword to bring out the fight. Now, if you know about The Witcher, Geralt still has the ability to use the different 5 combat spells, which is known as signs in the game. The first one is Ard, which is a telekinetic push, Igni, which is flame, Eredin, which is the magical trap, Quen is protective shield, and Axii, which is to charm your opponent. And most of the time, you'll find that Quen is very helpful, so you use it a lot of times. And with this at your disposal, you'll be able to use potions and sword oils. Now, depending on the difficulty you play at, you can also meditate through the days to regenerate your health in the game, or use potions and also eat food. Now, aside from the sword combat, the potion usage, and also the signs, there is a skill tree to accompany all these aspects. The skill tree for me wasn't too interesting because there were more buffs than techniques. The most interesting spells I find for signs was probably the Igni, because you get to shoot fire from your hand, which is really cool. Everything else was just meh. The sword combat also has a really cool move later on where you twirl the sword around and completely melt faces in. Now the other thing that needs to be known about the skill tree is that you can't just invest points into the skill tree and it'll automatically be used. You have to put it in a slot. The slots open up as you level with Geralt in the game. So by the time you unlock all the slots, it takes a really long time. You'll be level 30. The other thing about the slots skills is that depending on which skills you put in there, they have certain colors to differentiate them. For example, you put green in there or red for sword, and if you put the right mutagens, which you find from monsters, in the slot, it gives you a benefit, more attack power, etc. And they can be upgraded also. So by putting the right mutagens in, you'll gain a buff for the skills. Now, one of the most overlooked choice in the game will probably be Axii Delusion. A lot of people have asked me this: how do you get delusions into conversations? There's a choice in the game where you can pick delusion to get out of situations or open up more options for conversation. The only way you do that is to put Axii Delusions into your slot. If you don't do this, it's going to be crossed out in red and you can't pick those choices, unfortunately. So it kind of sucks that it uses up a slot, but that's how you do it. Now, the good news is that your skills are not permanent. You can always change them and respec them for 1,000 coins in the game through special vendors. There are vendors in the game that sells a respec item for you so that you can actually re-put your points in where you want them. Now, the potions, oils, and bombs work differently in this game than the previous game. You can upgrade them to tiers, you can find ingredients for them, and then recipe to craft them and upgrade them. So you can't just jump from a normal oil to a superior version of it without having to go through certain steps and getting the enhanced version. Sometimes you won't find these recipes through vendors. You have to search everywhere for them, including boxes, houses, or special areas, or earn them through special rewards. Now, potions and bombs are now used as charges instead of having to recraft them over and over again. Once you craft them, you'll have them. The only way to increase the charges is to upgrade tier level. The thing about potion is that they have shorter time limits now, and concoctions are the one that has longer time limit, which can last up to 30 minutes. Now keep in mind that if you use potions and concoctions, they bring up toxin levels. Concoction brings up the most, so be careful how you use it because you might end up poisoning yourself and killing yourself. Now, in order to replenish your supplies of potions and bombs, all you have to do is meditate in the game with alcohol on. The only problem with this is you can't choose the alcohol type. It automatically chooses for you and uses the alcohol to replenish your stocks. The only thing Geralt really doesn't have to replenish in the stock is sword oils. You can reapply it to your weapons anytime you want. In the beginning, there's only 20 charges. As you go to the tiers, you get more charges. But there's also an alchemy tree where if you put points into it, you don't have to reapply oil ever again. And it's a very nice tree to go down if you want to become a alchemy spec swordsman. The only downside for me is the inventory. When you have so many potions and oil, the sword oil, you always have to reapply them, and it kind of sucks because you have to look through all these oils to reapply the oil on your sword, and sometimes they all look the same, so you have to be able to memorize the color and the potions and where it's at. The next thing I'll talk about is inventory, stashes, and craftable items. There is no inventory stash. Unfortunately, there isn't one in this game yet, so hopefully they'll add one later on. I'm pretty sure they will because it just boggles my mind why this wasn't in the first place. So everything you carry is on your character, and there's a weight limit, which is based on the equipment of your horse. The problem with this is when all items are on you, when you're cleaning your inventory and you're selling it to the merchants, you have to be careful not to spam your spacebar, which I did several times, and I sold my most valuable weapons and armor, and it just, thank God for quick save. The weapons and armor also have color coding on them, which is nice for you to tell items apart, of course, but the interface in the inventory needs a bit more work in order for you to organize a bit better. As for looting in the game, there's plenty of loots in the game. There's plenty of different gears and armors that you can use. There's plenty of materials you can find because you can literally loot everything in this game. So there's no reason for you to be broke in the game. If you use your Witcher vision and you go in people's houses, you can loot materials. There's dungeons you can find. There's question marks on the map that will have treasure chests that you can find. I mean, there's just so much loot in this game. It's crazy. Just be careful not to loot in front of guards because what happens is if you loot in front of them, they'll smack the crap out of you and take all your money. And for those of you that were asking me the questions about different coins in the game, there's only one type of coin that you use in the game. If you find florins or another coin in the game, all you have to do is go to the bank in Novigrad and exchange the coins. Now keep in mind, when you vendor materials off, merchants have a set amount of coins on them. So all you have to do is meditate or travel to other vendors if you need to sell your materials. I find that the armorsmith and weaponsmith in the game carries the most coin most of the time, and people in Novigrad. Now, what I really like about the game is the crafting system and the weapons and armor in the game. There's tons of weapons and armor in the game. As long as you have the recipe for it, you can craft it or you can buy it. But the main thing is, if you're trying to craft certain things, it's really easy to understand the crafting system. Just find the recipes or buy the recipes and you'll be able to craft them. You can even dismantle older weapons, items, armors, and so on to create new materials so that you can craft the item you're looking for. There are certain weapons and armor in the game that has slots in them and you can put runes in them to give them more power. And remember, there are certain categories of sword. Depending on what type of sword you have, they will affect your combat speed, and also the armor sets. There's different armors that you can wear. There are light armors, medium, and heavy. As for the upgradable weapons and items in the game, the only upgradable weapons and items would have to be the Witcher set items. Unfortunately for the Viper and the Wolf Skull, you can't really upgrade the gear set. They are colored green. However, the only skulls that can be upgraded is the Cat Skull weapon, the Griffin, and the Bear. And you'll find all the recipe for this scattered throughout the map. I managed to find every single one of it. It took me hours to find them, but once you find the clues to them and discover them and mastercraft them, you'll be able to craft some of the most powerful weapons in the game. So I wanted to add this clip in for you guys to give you a choice to look at them and see what you like and then search for them. Basically, Cat is the light armor, Griffin is the medium, and the Bear is the heavy set. Next, I'll talk about the physics. There wasn't much physics in the game except for destructible walls, crates, and some items. Tables don't really move and turn when the items don't fall off from it. Giant monsters don't really crash down trees as they chase you. This is due to the current engine limitations, so hopefully we'll see an upgrade in that in the future. I was kind of disappointed that the physics wasn't really amazing in this game, but I'm looking forward to what the future holds. The only thing I find immersion breaking in the game in this aspect is the ragdoll in the game. Sometimes the enemy body bounces, sometimes they slide across the map, or sometimes they fly 25 feet in the air. Who knows? Hopefully we'll see a fix to that. If not, I don't know what to say. But an RPG game of this scale would have plenty of bugs. I found plenty of bugs in the game, of course. Hopefully they'll iron those out, but they were funny, and I'm making an episode out of it. So you can check out a video for that later on when I upload it. As for replayability of the game, there isn't multiplayer of any kind for the game, and it doesn't really need any because it's an RPG, but hopefully we'll see a feature like that in future games. Aside from that, there's no modding in the game yet because Red Kit isn't released yet, so hopefully the modding community will jump on it to keep the game alive even longer. But for now, you can go at it with the game with different choices and different angles, and it'll add even more replayability for your game. Hell, I'm about to go at it for a second round for another 130 hours before Batman comes out. And before I forget, as for the end content and the post content of the game after beating it, there isn't anything else to do except materials you haven't done already. So it becomes really empty. So the only thing you are forced to do is to restart the game over. And finally, as a final note, CD Projekt Red is one of my most favorite top company of all time because they are the only company that don't adhere to the standard practice of most companies out there. They don't put a DRM on their game and treat players like criminals. Even if they got it to a different mean, they would still get the patches, which is insane. The only things that the dev asks you to do is, if you like their games, support the game by buying it. They also don't release and make you pay for DLC that are already on the disc, but instead give it to you for free as time goes on. And when they do come out with an enhanced version of the game, it's usually free. Another thing is that their season pass, unlike most other games' season pass, isn't going to be just materials from the game itself, but they're going to add new land in the game, new places to explore, and expansions, actual expansions to the game. Dude, that's enough for me to support this company. You know, these are some of the factors in it, but another thing is that they're run by gamers. So one of my most favorite company of all time. You know, they got great games. Check them out. Definitely support them if you like them. If you like the review, remember to subscribe and like the video. Hopefully this will encourage you to play the game yourself. If not, you can always check out my other playthrough videos. I will definitely release more videos coming out. So one of it is going to be a cool music video for the game, and I'll also do a bug episode video for the game just for fun. As I said before, this is a great game, great story, and great adventure. A lot of you guys who've played it already know what I'm talking about and experienced it and already going for it again. Others of you who haven't purchased the game yet or haven't played it yet, you need to check it out. Great contender for Game of the Year right now. We'll have to wait and see what other games comes out, but for now, in my books, top game. Thanks for watching. Remember to always enjoy your game, play your game, live your game. Game on.